Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and economic growth and opportunity across America. This week, I met with entrepreneur and creator Donna Kasseinova in our LA studio. Donna discussed her journey as an immigrant from Russia to the United States and her passion for music. Before arriving in the U.S., she had graduated as a classical pianist from the prestigious Gnessin Music Academy in Moscow. She drifted away from music and prioritized her focus on hard work, networking, and building her business skills. She also maintained her connections in the fallen Soviet Union and eventually set up a very successful business that matched the new Eastern Europe demand with products and services available in the United States. As her business grew, she realized the need for a business education and went back to school and earned her MBA from the USC Marshall School of Business. Donna eventually began to give back to her community and reignite her passion for music. She founded the Southern California-based Palos Verdes music salon that began matching some of the nation's best musicians to perform in exquisite private homes, matching the patrons with the artists. I enjoyed exploring Donna's personal experiences and insights, highlighting the importance of self-reflection, support for artists, and pursuing one's passions. She provided her thoughts of the American dream and emphasizes the importance of looking inward and taking responsibility for one's own success, and encourages individuals to pursue their passions and become professionals in their chosen field. I hope you enjoy. Good afternoon, Donna. How you doing?
Very good.
Good. Thank you so much for coming out here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a huge
Yeah.
honor.
Yeah, thank you. I, looking at your history and your background of, coming here 30 years ago to the United States, and then all of the things that you've been able to accomplish, entrepreneur, a businesswoman, a creator, holding patent, all these different things. And I think, something that's been very interesting to me, you and I kind of have a common path through USC and with the MBA program, but I think—
That's what intrigued me in the first place. I'm like,
yeah.
children.
Well, I think what's going to be really interesting for the listeners today is, kind of in that category of a creator, you'll tell your story, but the most interesting part for me is, basically you are a classically trained pianist, and anybody that kind of goes from the music part and then you kind of lose yourself into business, and then sometimes you kind of want to get back and find your way to being creative again. You and I've talked about that, and I think today what I want to do is explore that a little bit and go through there. If you wouldn't mind, Donna, talk a little bit about where you grew up and your journey coming to the United States.
We start from the very beginning.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what you just said is reminding me that there is such notion that there is no such thing as a former musician. Once you're a musician, you're a musician. Just the fact that you don't get to play or don't get to perform doesn't mean that you stop being a musician. So I always felt about myself like I am a musician, although, just like you pointed out, I had a huge chunk of my life kind of like carved out of that. Carved out meaning that I was still productive and artistic in different ways, but I was not playing. I was not performing. And quite frankly, I don't even plan to perform in my life anymore, because I settled with the idea of who I am, that I will always be a musician. It's just in different formats. So my musical journey started in Kazakhstan. I was born in a former Soviet Republic, now independent country called Kazakhstan. And I went through the whole music system, which was, by the way, you have to give it props where, they're due, to Soviet government, which really handled musical education, revered as something just as important as math or language or anything like that. So musical education was very important for in families where kids were, treated to everything that education could offer. And so I went through the whole cycle of being in a music school and then moved to Moscow to study at the Gnessin Academy. It's called Academy now. It used to be called Gnessin Institute. This is the conservatory that I won't afraid to claim it, only second to Moscow Conservatory. It's a very prestigious institution that produced numerous highly acclaimed musicians and composers and conductors over the years. So I was very privileged to spend 5 years in Moscow studying music, but it just so happened, and it's a whole different story of how it happened, that I literally played my last recital to earn my master's in performing arts on June 6th. And on June 7th of 1991, I was on a plane to the United States.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of the end of one chapter and almost the immediate beginning of the next chapter.
Can I ask you a question? So Kazakhstan would have been very southern Russia. Moscow, pretty embedded. When you left, I mean, were you by yourself? Did your family go with you to Moscow?
Oh, no, I was by myself. And this was very common for children who excelled at the previous point of education to actually be sent from different republics to study in Moscow and St. Petersburg, because they were the, obviously the most important centers, for music education in Moscow and St. Petersburg. So it was kind of the path that was that I had ever since maybe 6th or 7th grade. Like to kind of try to get myself good enough to be qualified to be sent over to Moscow.
So the recital happens, and then next day you're on a plane.
On a plane.
What got you out so immediately?
Well, the story goes back the previous summer when my father helped me to not help me. He got me into this program, without much discussion or much deliberation about it. He got me into this program that was some kind of an American-Russian exchange for students who wanted to be camp counselors for a couple of weeks during the summer. So United States would send a couple of young 18, 20, 21-year-olds to work at camps in Russia, and that was the whole idea of the exchange, that you send us yours and we'll send you ours. So it was very hard to get. My father pulled some kind of connections, I don't know, and he got me into this program. So I came to the United States and I spent a couple of months as a camp counselor on this exchange. And just like with anything else, I looked around and said, I like it here. How do I get back? Mm-hmm. And so I made friends with pretty much everybody who was there, counselors and the director of the camp. It was an all-girls equestrian camp, very different from anything I've seen in my Soviet upbringing. And I really liked the place, and I figured that I want to come back. I want more of the same. Mm-hmm. And so I arranged with this director to send me a personal invitation. That was the only way we could travel when someone invited, vouched for you, wrote a long letter that he will be responsible for my expenses, that. In that respect, I owe him my presence in this country, because he was kind enough, and I guess he liked me, and he invited me the following summer. And so I bought a ticket, and I had a tourist visa just to visit, just to come back, because I didn't get enough, and I didn't see enough, because I spent 2 months in the camp, and I wanted to see the cities and the rural areas and different type of people and musicians. So I came back the year later on a tourist visa. And that's when I decided for sure that I don't want to go back, because once I saw the cities and the people and everything that I wanted to see, I made up my mind. I mean, this was the country I really wanted to be. And it actually coincided with the breakup of the Soviet Union as well, and that played a huge role. It was the summer of 1991, and it just so happened that was the summer when the tanks were on Red Square, and everything I knew when I grew up in and I was familiar with kind of like crumbled overnight. And my mom called me and said, you know what, if you can stay a little bit longer, why don't you do it? Back in the days, I could extend my tourist stay till for 6 months and then another 6 months up to a year. And in a year, when you're young, I was 23 years old, you start like placing those roots like so quickly. It's in friends, and it's all of a sudden there's like a opportunity to make a little bit of money, and then you get used to your environment, you get used to your surroundings so quickly. It's phenomenal. It's not like that for us nowadays. You know, moving, like the act of moving at our age is completely different than the act of moving at 23. So I got used to my life, my little humble life that I built for myself in a very short time. And so the decision was kind of made by myself, but also by the situation and by the history of what was going on back then. So the Soviet Union, I literally came to this country with a Soviet red passport with a hammer and sickle. Yeah.
Wow. When you got here, you know, you have this music background. You know, my son's a comedian, so, you know, he's really good, and he can go anywhere in big cities, walk into the comedy area and get a job and make some decent money for a night. And he could probably, and he does, he pieces that type of stuff together. As a musician, you know, there's a lot of different avenues. Did you find yourself leaning on that? Because you and I have talked to before, you know, the humble beginnings of babysitting, of bartending, of, you know, house cleaning. You've done it all. And, but so, you know, a little bit of the American dream, but a little bit of like, I got to do whatever I can do.
Absolutely.
What did you, as a form of employment, what did you focus on the most? Did you use your music career?
Well, I knew right away that for me to get on a level where musicians are actually making money, where they have classes of students that are willing to pay them, you know, big bucks for their expertise, their experience, their education, I was nowhere near. I mean, mind you, this is a 23-year-old girl who doesn't speak really good English, who doesn't have work authorization, cannot work legally in the country, and who has no idea how the world works.
Right.
So I tried to contact some people who I knew were in the United States, just friends of friends, but that really didn't go nowhere. And so this is the point where the survival had to take precedence over ambitions. And so my ambitions, I tucked them away for later, for much later, as it turns out. I didn't even know for how much later, but it turns out for much, much later. But the survival took the first stage, like you needed to pay that dreaded New York's rent every first of every month, and you are always short $100. It's like, I don't know how, what algorithm is responsible for that. You make money on 3 jobs, and you're always short $100.
And you were in Manhattan.
Manhattan, yes.
Yeah, so you're in Manhattan. How did you end up to the West Coast? How did you end up at USC?
Oh, that was much later when I already basically completed my level 1 cycle of odd jobs and not being able to work. And, you know, later I found a way to actually legalize myself in the country through the help of the Russian Orthodox Church, where I was teaching the Sunday school and singing in the choir. And it turns out that there was a visa for religious workers that allowed them to sponsor me, because the idea is that we simply don't have enough people who understand Russian Orthodoxy, who can read, you know, old Russian scripts, who can sing and lead the choir, and who can teach in Sunday school. So the process was they needed to post some kind of an ad in the paper looking for someone like me, but I was the only one, believe me. And so it was very clear that, you know, I qualified. And so that gave me immediately access to work authorization. And I became kind of like a real person. Up until then, I was half a person, you know? We were actually, it's funny right now with all this debate about homelessness. Like, I used to remember looking at the homeless person thinking, at least you have a social security. At least you can go and find a job. I can't even do that. I have to look for someone who will be willing to, you know, almost break the law to give me like $20 to babysit their kid under the table, you know? So that was like super hard. That was super hard. And I also have to know that 30 years ago, both employers and law enforcement were much more law-abided. So it was not as easy as probably today for someone like myself to find an odd job. So it was hard.
So Donna, it's interesting. You know, fast forward, yeah, and this might be even after USC, but you know, to hear those troubles and then to know exactly where you're at with all the great stuff that you've done, the businesses you've started, you know. The show's about merit and the meritocracy process, and you know, people can come. You know, you can be an immigrant that comes to the country. You can be somebody that starts in the middle of somewhere and then you don't have anything. But you know, if you follow the process of declaring credentials along the way, you eventually kind of claw your way up. One of the important credentials for you, obviously, was your immigration status. But then, as you kind of kept going, what was the focus that got you to realize that you needed an MBA, and what type of a credential why were you trying to use that credential?
Well, it's because, as I mentioned, the breakup of the Soviet Union coincided with my arrival to the United States. And a couple of years later, while I was just struggling to keep myself afloat, a lot of opportunities started showing up in my former homeland, in Kazakhstan and Russia, where I spent 5 years. And so, the influx of foreign investment went in, and the just entrepreneurial spirit was, for the first time, openly allowed. People could finally open their own shop, their restaurant. They could finally build something that they could draw and see through the whole process of developing, designing, financing, and actually, cutting a ribbon. So a lot of things were happening, a lot of opportunities. But I was kind of outside of that network. But soon I learned that my presence in the United States had its value, because although all those opportunities were opened up, still the people back then were lacking general understanding of how things should be done. And I started finding myself consulting and helping them to basically figure out how to do things. Sometimes it was just as simple as, can you help us buy this? We need 25 boxes because we don't have it. Mm-hmm. And so that would be my job, to go and find it, to make sure that, I know how to package, process, send it over and take it through customs. It started from little tiny projects, and it ended up culminated in someone calling me and saying, you know what, we want to build a movie theater. I know some people in the city of Astana, which is a capital right now. They want to build a movie theater, but they don't know what to start with. They know that American theaters are built with completely different equipment that our old Soviet ones. We don't know who to contact. We don't know. Okay, sit back. I know everything. I didn't know anything.
There you go.
Well, but that's the whole idea of entrepreneurship. Never say no to anything.
There you go.
It's always yes.
Yep.
It's always yes, and then you hang up the phone, and then you figure it out. Mm-hmm. Because you can do anything. You can do everything. Back in the days, it wasn't even a matter of Googling or finding. It was yellow pages, hard work, calling, literally finding this section in some kind of a registry of businesses that are somehow involved with cinema equipment, and just cold calling them, saying, look, I'm calling you from this weird country that didn't exist on the map just 2 years ago, and they want to buy your equipment. It's how do you I don't even remember how we used to do business. You remember. It was basically between landline phone, the fax. Fax was important. Fax was big deal. And that's it. There was no such tools like Zoom or, I couldn't jump on a plane and travel to Miami or whatever. So it had to be done with very, very limited tools. But as I said, my motto was always never say no to anything. Do anything. And so we built this theater. We ended up hiring an architectural firm in New York, and then I ended up finding anybody who supplies projectors and, the carpet and everything. So it was supposed to be a turnkey project. And so that was the big project that I helped build to my friends in Kazakhstan. But at the end of this process, I realized that I felt very underqualified for these kind of things. I couldn't understand the difference between like equity and lending, and like it was all gibberish to me, like completely. I was sitting in the boardroom sometimes, just observing them converse, and like distinctly realizing that I'm lacking something. And what I was lacking academic, education in business, understanding of like what's called what and for which reason and how things work together. And so I decided to get an MBA just to be equipped with that knowledge, a little bit of accounting, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of business development, a little bit of everything, because I had nothing. I just had like this bold, kind of like survival instinct that I can do anything, just like pay me.
It's interesting, Donna. It's like, one of my sons right now is contemplating going to MBA school. And, my three guys have been very successful. And, when I talk to him, he on paper has unbelievable credentials. And, his thing now is he's really in a job that he's getting a tremendous amount of experience. And I could just imagine in the MBA program how grateful they were to get someone like yourself, because when I was there, they had an entrepreneur side at USC. And, and I was after the 91 time period for my MBA, but I was there in the early 90s. And those markets opening up, post Soviet Union, a lot of different markets opening up, and so there was a need for that type. But people that were here, we knew how to find the stuff. We just didn't have contacts over there or wherever there was. So it had to be a pretty nice marriage of not only what you were going to learn in the way of business, but also that richness you would probably bring in the class. I'm sure was kind of a two-way street for the folks there.
It probably was, but I flew through that program like in such a high speed, because it was 3.5-year program, if you remember, MBA for managers, business. What was it called? MBA. Executive, exactly. I think it was a 3.5-year program, and I flew through the program in 2 years. I was just like getting as many I needed it as a tool. Like I didn't want to just linger and enjoy student life. I was too old for student life. It was already what was it, like 2000? So yeah, I was inching my 30s, and I didn't feel like I could just enjoy all this time to be a student. So I flew through it really quickly. It's a bit of a blur, to be honest, but I learned a lot. I mean, a lot of people now claim, I see many posts like that on social media that, you don't need education, you don't need, just go and get yourself some kind of a trade job and be happy. And well, I kind of disagree, because it disciplined me. It showed me the core, the basic skeleton of what the business looks like, how it functions. And then obviously everything else is artistic freedom, so to speak. Like you can, there's many thousand ways to skin a cat. And so, but you need to know what the cat is. So I learned what the cat is in that program, and I'm very grateful. I think it was very helpful in my later endeavors, because first of all, it gives you confidence. There is one thing when you're doing something kind of like, like a blind person in the dark, kind of intuitively, you know what needs to be done, but you have no idea if you're on the right path. There's another thing when you already read all those Harvard School cases that we were, you remember how many like we had to go through, and you already kind of relived a lot of situations that happened in real life, and you already had to kind of like mock decide for this business of what's going to happen to it, and you had to learn all those little neat tricks in how to structure it and how to run its finances and how to account. So I think it's very invaluable. I'm grateful that I did it.
So after you finished your MBA, kind of canonized your background, you had a very great run entrepreneurially, and when you get through the end of that and you pop out, even today, outside of here, you and I've talked about 2 or 3 businesses you got going. I'm kind of interested, because now that you've kind of achieved this, and you've looked back, and I think what's been exciting for me to see is the ability to now kind of go back to your passion. And you were kind of probably alluding to this as the music, and how can I, now I'm successful. You and your husband both super successful, but you kind of want to go back to your roots, to the things you really enjoyed, that you wish that maybe you could have done from the very beginning. Talk about your perspective of really kind of matching your business and your network with music and the arts.
Well, as I said in the beginning of our conversation, that I never believed that I could be a former musician. I always felt that I was, although sometimes I even lived for years at a time in the apartment without an instrument. So, once I realized that I now reached some more elevated position in societal strata, and more obviously in terms of connections and income and freedom, of course, my mind went back to where I was like the happiest, which is the music. Only these many years later, I was not kidding myself and not pretending to be someone who can just like go back to the piano and like start playing again. That was pretty impossible. I knew that from the get-go. But I could do something else. I could facilitate some kind of a different connection between musicians and people that I know and I can invite to the salons. And that's how I came up with this idea of just basically help other musicians as if I was them. I basically had an understanding of what would I like if I was a musician. I would like to be invited to play because that's what they do. And I always preface my concerts with reminding people who donate, people who buy tickets, that these musicians, they're not flipping real estate on the side. Right. They don't have jobs. They're all in.
Yep.
And they started at the age of 7. It's not like me just decided to, develop this pizzeria business,
Yeah.
I can afford to do that. They can't. They were plugged into this world at the age of 6, 7, 8 sometimes, and that is their world, and they don't do anything else. In order for them to play at my salon, again, sometimes some people, very few, but some, there are always some people like that, they will raise a brow like, what, $50? Like, oh, it's a home concert. How come it's $50? Well, how come? Let me tell you how come. They need to figure out the repertoire. They need to get together 2-3 times to rehearse. They need to stay in traffic on 405 to get to each other's place. Then they need, first of all, they need to find a date that works for everybody because they're all traveling and playing and have studio work and stuff like that. And then they need to come to my place early in the morning, rehearse before all of you come in, and then stay until all of you are gone. That's the entire day worth of, what is your day worth, And then people go, oh, I didn't think of it. Yeah, to me, it was just like an hour entertainment. Yes, that's an hour entertainment that they prepared their entire life.
Yeah.
So, and I started this thing, and I decided that I will charge people a little bit of a fee so we could, reimburse musicians. And I never intended for it to be any kind of, just a free event, charity, like calling on my friendships, like, hey, can you come and play for us? No, it was always designed to be like a meaningful gig, like a job for musicians, whereas it would provide a meaningful, not even entertainment, but I would rather call it enlightenment for people who are present. And so I called it a salon because I remember through Russian literature, it was mentioned more than 1,000 times that people in Paris and in different European capitals and in Moscow used to hold house salons where they would invite poets, artists, musicians, politicians for discussion, for game of cards, for drink of champagne, whatnot. And the conversation was always at the center stage, like this human connection. That's where the ideas were brewing. That's where the intellectual, public intellectuals of that time, they were finding their platform. So basically, anyone who has a podcast today would be welcomed at one of those salons in the 18th century. And so I really like the format. I like the format of someone home as opposed to a public venue. Once I started doing these concerts, I had numerous offers to have one at the local golf club and to have one at the retail space that could be closed down and refitted for the concert. But I really, really liked and always stood by it as an idea that it has to be someone's home. It has to be someone's innate environment with the family's entire history displayed on the walls through paintings, through the choice of furniture, through the choice of and the big qualifier for these people to even be interesting is because they already agreed to house one of my salons. That's a that's already a selective process. So those hosts are going to be amazing. They're going to be open to invite a whole bunch of people they don't know. They're going to be trusting enough to trust me to bring all these people. They're going to be willing to. It's a big deal for a lot of people. It's a huge deal to open your home for 60 people.
Yeah,
And so I'm eternally grateful to all these people who over the years stepped up and offered their homes. It would not be the same if we were just like holding it in some commercial place, or if it was always in my house, because I do it in my house more than in anybody else's house, because mine is always available. Right. Other people I have to coordinate with. But I'm very, very grateful to all of those hosts. They're amazing people. Without them, it would not be so successful.
I do a lot of work in charities, and it's kind of interesting. I think what caught my eye in this too was within charities, people that are either on the board or they're significant donors for whatever the charity is. They will host people in their house. Same type of concept, but the benefactor is the charity. And the thing that I've been fascinated with your salons is that the benefactors are really trying to help the musicians, and kind of find you talk about this, like the salons, 1600s, Italy, 1700, 1800s, France. That was a big way to find patrons for the arts too. Exactly. And I think, that's probably something that, it's probably an honor for the artists or the musicians to be a part of. When you get to the musicians with your background, and the same way that you had to go find the box or the carpet for a studio or a cinema, where do you find the musicians, and what is that process?
Well, that's where my partner comes on the stage, the spotlight. His name is Evgeny Tomka. He's, in my humble opinion, the best cello player in Los Angeles. And we've been friends before, and he knew that from time to time I just threw random concerts at my house. I didn't call them salons, like they were not structured in any meaningful way. It was just very ad hoc, like, hey, this and so is in town. Like, why don't we invite him? Like, let him play at my house. Like, I'll throw in wine and food, and we'll just have a good time. So we did that several times, and he knew that I'm always open to something like that. And so then a couple of people suggested, like, why don't you do it on a more or less continuous basis, like predictable basis, instead of like throwing 3 in 1 month, like do it like once every 2 months. And actually, again, one of the neighbors suggested, like, you can charge people. You don't have to pay for everything. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be your own financial burden. You can just, we'll gladly chip in. And so I talked to Evgeny because he is a concert cellist. He actually tours. He works a lot. He has a lot of studio work, a lot of concerts. He goes abroad. He travels a lot. And I consulted with him. So like, you think we can pull it off? So we like on a continuous, consistent basis. Like, of course. Like, it was not a shred of a doubt in his mind. He's like, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I engaged him as, my kind of like music director, because he has vast connections. He studied in Moscow, then he lived in Germany. He's the man of the universe. So he knows everybody. He's friendly with probably half of the musicians on this planet, and he can get to anyone, not through the 6 degrees of separation, through probably, 1 degree or something like that. So yeah, he's been very, very, very helpful in this regard, putting together programs.
And we'll get his information and put it in the show notes so people can read about what a great person he is. As you look at this, almost like a community service, for the listeners, what we're talking about is salons that are held in the South Bay here in Southern California.
In Palos Verdes.
In Palos Verdes, which
to be precise,
could be
yes.
could be a pretty nice area. But it's very nice up there. And like I said, and I think the opportunity to bring these different types of people together. When you talked about the salon was where ideas come from. Do the patrons follow it where they continually come, or is it the same people, or is it turnover in that process?
We obviously have a core, people who started coming to the salons many, many years ago, and they still come. And but just like with any other event, not everybody can make it every time. People have their own schedules, their own travel plans, their own obligations. So I do have a group of very dedicated people who really love coming to my salon. And it attracts more people every single time. I mean, lately I was unfortunately facing with the dilemma of turning off the ticket sales online because I couldn't just physically fit more than, let's say, 65 people. And I had to, unfortunately, turn people down. But this is a private endeavor that is not advertised anywhere. It's not. It's just by word of mouth and by. I know every single person that comes to it by name and by face. I have conversations with almost everybody. I think everybody. So and it's been very rewarding to do so.
Yeah, Donna, you and I have talked a little bit about, now you've been in the country for 30 years and, and you're not only are you going back to your roots of stuff that you like, down deep inside, but like giving back into the community, giving back into the fabric. One of the quotes that you had told me was, you got here 30 years ago and we look at what was America then. And then, we see where America's at today. And so a big part of what we try to pursue on the show is the American dream still there? And I think, you and I probably started our discussion with, it's not the same America it was 30 years ago. And I was just kind of curious from your perspective, just to give you a little bit of space to think about that question. One of the examples that I've used on the show before is, my wife is Iranian, and we do a lot of stuff in the Assyrian culture in her family. And at a lot of these events, I have the pleasure and an opportunity of talking with a lot of the men of, the men get together, we sit around a table, we have drinks, we just fellowship and talk. And, a lot of times they'll look around and see what's going on in America, and they're like, wow, and I've said this in a previous episode, so I'm not saying anything big here, but some of the discussion at the table is like, hey, we're seeing signs of like how it was in Iran before we had to leave. And I mean, and you hear stuff like that, and being here my whole life, I look at America as something that is as an aspiration, and that the thing that's kind of, this is my personal opinion, the thing that's kind of making us a little edgy now is the information age is so advanced that we're trying to find what this means now, this immediate gratification online where you can go and see everything about everybody. Instead of going out to the yellow pages, you could stay in Russia and look online and get everything there. Same way, social media is, we're all adjusting. But so I get concerned a little bit, and I'm just curious on your take as, people not giving up on America, but on thinking that the American dream is just not there. And someone like yourself has a very interesting perspective. You know the day you got here into Manhattan. You are doing unbelievable stuff now and very successful business. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. We talked about it, that a lot of my peers, people who came around the same time, and it's actually not 30, it's inching on 33 years now. So it's a huge chunk of time. A lot of immigrants from former Soviet republics who obviously also made like great, careers here in this country, and whose lifestyle improved dramatically over what it used to be back in the Soviet Union, obviously. We all share the same concern that it is not the same country that we came to. And I think, speaking of the American dream, it's still here, obviously. This country is bigger than any groups of people who are trying to derail it with their poisonous ideologies. But this country is still the best country to be in, to live in, to work, to build business, to be creative, to innovate. Still, I believe so. Part of my family lives in Turkey. Another part of my family lives in Vienna. I travel for business to every corner of the world. And I still believe that this is the best country to be in and to live and to do business. However, I noticed that, and maybe it's a little bit of a step outside of the immediate conversation, but my husband brought up this point, and I thought it was very insightful. He said, I challenge you to find one 1,000-year-old religion or school of philosophy or any meaningful compilation of human thought where in order to change something within yourself, you would be prompted to first criticize your environment or find for the solution in the way your outside world is set up. You won't find any, because the genius of the human thought is always looking inward, because all of your happiness, sorrows, and I guess everything basically is somewhere in this triangle between your brain, your heart, and your soul. And every single meaningful school of thought would always prompt you to look inward. So what we're doing right now, I feel like that's manifesting itself in a lot of cultural phenomena. We are teaching young people, and I have 2 sons, just like you. We're teaching young people to look outside, to blame the society for not having enough, for not being in the right place at the right time, for overworking. Those are not the problems. The problems are here. And I feel like we're losing it. We're losing this incredible tool that we all have, which is like self-analysis, self-observation, self-criticism. I mean, we all became instant Instagram divas, or OnlyFans models or whatever. And I'm not criticizing, it's the choice. But in this culture that, the culture of instant gratification, I mean, that thoughtful process of, looking at yourself first. What am I, contributing to my own success? What am I doing to change my environment? No, it's always look outward, criticize what surrounds you, and find flaw in the society. So, and that's what I think the major shift is. I think if I had to point just one kind of a eroding trend, that would be it.
Yeah, I think that's like I said, one of the main objectives of this podcast is exploring that. It's like but I'm absolutely coming at it from the glass half full. But I we're sharing about our kids. I look at my kids, and at least the way I feel like I tried to raise them is to look within themselves, to take responsibility. Go out and do what you can do, and and don't make excuses. Go out and and I think that's tough, because I think when once they're raised and they're out and they're my guys are men, the pressures, and even them with a strong upbringing, a lot of times, the beautiful thing about having sons or daughters, and you maintain that relationship, and so you're constantly going back and forth, and for me, I learn as much about the challenges that they have, that and sometimes I have to be empathetic, and I still I know where true north is. That's the direction. And so I don't know. I just think it's very interesting. I appreciate you sharing that, because, I think a lot of different voices on the show, we are trying to put people in that have a testimonial of, hey, look, and it seems like the themes are fairly common, like you're saying, look within yourself.
It's so obvious, at least for, our generation. I probably sound like an old person right now, it's our generation, but no, it's objectively. I just see all the changes, in even in school programs, how they treat children with, always with this kids gloves, they're afraid to challenge them. They're afraid to, everyone is a winner. Like it's I think it's killing us slowly through the education, through the system of our colleges that, that have now been exposed for really straying from their main purpose, which is educate our children into the politics and ideologies and like different kind of things that, quite frankly, is unfair what we do to children, because that's where they were supposed to go and learn the basics of how life works. That's why they're supposed to read the actual literature. And I'm a huge proponent of reading. I think that people, and there are studies that show that people nowadays do not have enough patience to even scroll down all the way to the bottom of the article. That the people who write news articles are now actually prompted to describe the entire event in the first paragraph and then leave all the details for the rest of the article, because people simply don't have enough patience to scroll. And so I myself find difficult to stay with the book unless I leave my phone in another room. It's very difficult because we became so attached. So that's not a bad thing. It's also a phenomenal tool in my business. Like I can have all of my businesses literally in the palm of my hand. Like I keep my hand on the pulse of everything that I do. It's phenomenal. But at the time when you need to reflect and to read, like I always go back to classical literature and to my second son, who is still young and still questions like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that? My job and your job and everyone's job, everyone who is older than, basically legal adult, we should be able to explain that reading, the consuming that wide, wealth of classical literature is just, it's equivalent of living all those lives that are described in those books. It enriches you on a levels you can't even imagine. It's not just you get some ideas and some philosophical notions. You also get to live through those characters. You get to be a little girl in the 17th century England. You get to be a soldier in the First World War. You get to be anyone who the author is describing. You get to relive that person's, emotions, his decision-making process. It's fascinating. That's better than any psychology class that any college can offer. And this is another, I think, huge problem that I witness by first raising my now 25-year-old son, and now watching my 12-year-old. So they need to read. They need to be. They need to understand history better. They need to go back to the basics. And unfortunately, it's not very trendy right now to go back to the basics, because I've lived through that cycle. We'll demolish everything. We'll build our own. We'll do everything from scratch. We'll be successful. It never happens.
So Donna, as we kind of get ready to close off here, you think about your journey, going back, starting in Russia and then getting over here. Anything that you would leave the listeners that are looking at kind of a perspective of wanting to go back to maybe this thing that they love, or just from where you've been? Like I said, you've metamorphosed a lot of different times, through your career. And a lot of people that listen to the show really want to walk and chew gum. They do whatever they do great, or maybe they want to move on to something else. I guess maybe just the final thought is, as you made all of your moves, do you think that you had to force yourself through the move, or do you wait for the opportunity to hit you and it kind of rekindles itself back to where you were at?
I think it's always both, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure you have an interesting life yourself. In business and entrepreneurial environment, and and with this podcast as well. This is a little bit of a passion for you as well, similar to
absolutely.
what salon is for me. So I think everyone who has this life that is not one-dimensional, they would all agree that it's always a combination of the opportunity and the desire. So, but here's the funny thing about opportunity. The more desire you have, the more opportunities show up on your path. It's just that. Because desire is not just, by desire, I don't mean just to stay in your bed and look in the ceiling and dream about like what you would do. By desire, I mean the active pursuit of something that will make you happy. And once you start doing it, like opportunities will always present themselves, always. That's how I teach my sons. Once you set your mind on this, once you start, reading and immersing yourself in something, it's like, Nabokov, Russian-American writer, Vladimir Nabokov, he actually believed that there are professional writers and professional readers. He called readers professional readers because to be able to read a book, and to notice everything that the author wanted to tell you, and to notice all the little details that he so painfully struggled over, sometimes for months, and to appreciate the character development, to appreciate the turn of events and plot twists and everything. I mean, you should be able to really understand what you're doing. You should know. You basically have to have a previous experience of reading other books, maybe not as complex. So he called them professional readers. And I think that any one of us can become professional in whatever we like. You can become a professional chef. Like, what does it take? It takes to become more inquisitive, to learn more about the ingredients you use, to be more interested in learning food outside of your comfort zone. I mean, what does stop anyone to become professional anything?
That is an awesome point, honestly.
You can be, if you can be a professional reader, you can be professional anything. So, and I think once you find that outlet that allows you to be just basically melt in what you do and just like become one with the thing that you do, it's a glorious feeling. Who said that? Find a job you like and you'll never have to work again. Yeah, that's along those lines.
Don, I got to tell you, I think that is a great insight, and I think your example of the reader is so true. I've just recently started reading, I read a lot of books, but I also now started listening to books on tape. I'm a runner, and I like to listen to podcasts, and I like to listen to books. And what I'm noticing on books on tape is like you definitely can rewind and just wait, what did he just say? And it's a little bit of a dialogue. And I find, like you said, I miss stuff. I've read books that I've listened to books I've read, and I was like, wow, I missed a part of it. And I think that same rule can apply in life and to what you want to
The most
achieve.
fascinating experience is when you go back to the books you read when you were 20. Reread them again. It's like, really?
Yeah.
How did I walk away with completely different perception of this book? So 30 years later, I pick up a book sometimes, that I read in my 20s. It's like completely different experience. I guess I became a more professional reader over time.
Well, Donna, I just wanted to tell you, I really appreciate you being on the show and coming to the studio. And I think your story is fascinating. I just wanted to tell you thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.